really glad you're all here. I think about, what it means to have Sangha and how meaningless it would be for me to do this at home by myself. So how wonderful it is that we all support each other. And as is traditional in this lineage, we pay homage to Native Americans who lived on this land before us, and in this case to the Chumash, who have stewarded its natural wealth and beauty for thousands of years before us. But I'd also like to add to all those who since that time have lived and worked with an intention of caring for the wonders of this land, and maybe for all of us who try very hard to maintain this land. As I start this morning, I have a nephew-in-law. He's my niece's husband. My niece lived with me when she was young, from the time I was about 14 till I left home, and then she and her husband lived with us for a period here when they moved down here. So they're very close to me, and Steve, has cancer, and it has gone into his brain, and his wife was told yesterday that he probably won't wake up again, and that he has 1 or 2 days to live. So I'd like to take just a moment, if you indulge me please, of silence to just wish him peace. Goso said, "It's like a cow passing through a window. Its head passes through, its horns and 4 legs pass, but why can't the tail pass through?" So like all koans, this is the 38th koan in the Gateless Gate, and like all koans, it seems illogical that we have this cow. Sometimes they say a bull, sometimes they say a water buffalo. It's different translations, but this cow, the large parts of it, the horns and the head and the legs and the chest all pass through, but the smallest part, the tail, the tip of the tail, cannot pass through. So in this koan, the window really represents delusion. And maybe we could say the space between our realizing our Buddha nature and not realizing our Buddha nature. And the tail is that one thing, or those many things, that we can't accept, that we resist, or that we hold on to, and that we just can't let go enough to be here and be with things as they are. Dogen tells us that we're already Buddha. Suzuki Roshi tells us the same thing. Many, many teachers tell us that we are already Buddha. And yet so much of the time we can't see it, can't feel it. We think somehow we have to become something else to awaken. We think maybe someday when I can count to 10 without interrupting myself, when I'm following my breath. Or maybe when I understand Buddhism better, then I can awaken. When I become a better person, when I adhere better to the precepts, that day I'll awaken, someday in the future. But really nowhere does it tell us that we have to be perfect to be Buddha. We're Buddha right now just as we are, even when we can't see it. Doesn't matter that we can see it, just is. But still we think, not today, not now, maybe later, maybe later. All of these things are the tail that won't pass through the window. The tail is those things about ourselves or about others, or about the world, which we just don't accept, or which we grasp onto. So in Zen, we always start with studying the self. Always start right here. And we start in the most simple way. We start with just sitting still and following our breath and noticing what is. Just noticing. And if you've ever sat a 7-day sitting, you know at some point that mind that's always chattering at us just becomes like the wind or like the pain in our knee. It just becomes one more thing that's there. As we practice, we come to realize that our own Buddha nature does not exclude anything, that it includes everything, all the good about us and all the good in the world, all our perceived faults, all the perceived faults of others and the world, all the not quite there yet reservations, all of it, all of this imperfect being that I am, all of it is a perfect manifestation of Buddha nature, just as it is. Right here, right now, not tomorrow, right here. So what I want to talk to you about today is not that. That's all great, because that's not what I want to talk about. I want to talk to you about others and how we see them as Buddha. It's hard enough to see ourselves, and it's maybe tenfold harder to see it in others. And yet, I think as we begin to see ourselves as Buddha, we begin to have a glimpse of others as Buddha as well. So I want to talk about not necessarily how we do relate, but how we might aspire to relate to others. Or maybe my aspiration about how I would like to relate to others. You know, this is my new vow, to try to see the Buddha in others. So on Friday, I was driving and I was listening to NPR, and they have Science Fridays on Friday, which I really enjoy. And they were talking about orcas. I don't know if anybody else heard this, but anyway, they're talking about orcas, and they were talking about them because they've been ramming boats off the coast of Europe. But they also talked about a story about what happened with orcas back in 1987 in Puget Sound. And that was that first one orca put a dead salmon on its head and swam around with a dead salmon on its head like a hat. And then pretty soon the entire pod was swimming around with dead salmon on their head, which I think is pretty incredible, you know. And I thought, is that really true? And I looked it up, and there were photos, you know, of this. And they did this for about 6 weeks, and then they stopped. And then the following summer, or whatever it was, one whale tried to revive it, but it didn't catch on, you know. So scientists are baffled, you know. They study these guys, and they're going, what is the meaning of this? And, you know, they had all kinds of theories about maybe it's training for hunting, or maybe it's kind of acrobatic thing, or maybe it's just a cool new thing that everybody's doing, like guys wearing the sticker still on their hats, you know, on their head, right? Gotta wear that sticker on the bill of your hat. And really they have no explanation. And I was thinking that this is like us looking at other people. We look at other people and we try to explain, what the heck are they doing? I mean, sometimes they act like us. We have certain societal ways we act, and everybody acts the same. That's fine, you know, and we think, you know, we don't have a problem. But sometimes we look at them and say, what the heck are they doing? What is this about? And sometimes it may be really cool, and sometimes it may be really problematic. So just like orcas, we may not understand it, but it's really wonderful, you know. And I think that trying to look at people and see them as really wonderful even some of their aberrant behavior, you know, it's the whole thing. It's the whole thing. We're pretty incredible how varied and complex we are. So we not only try to explain, but we often try to modify or control our own behavior and the behavior of others. But really, it's just a vast mystery, and we're just kind of a hot mess of causes and conditions. You know, we inherited so much of the way we are. We got a lot of it from our experiences. And really, biology and chemistry have a huge amount with who we are. And if you've ever, I don't know, I had an experience once where I had to take some medication and my thyroid went hyperthyroid. And I was like running around all anxious and really hyper and talking to people like this and bumping into everything. And they called me up and said, your thyroid's hyper and you have to stop this medication. It was like, whew, you know? But who am I? You know, I'm this chemistry. I'm all the experiences that I've ever had. And I'm many things that I inherited, you know, that have nothing to do with my own karma or conditions. So one of my favorite passages by Dogen, and some of you may know this, is One Bright Pearl. I actually have it in if you've been to my house, it's on the wall in my guest bathroom. And it goes, the reality and beginninglessness of the bright pearl are beyond grasp. All the universe is one bright pearl. We do not speak of 2 pearls or 3 pearls. Your whole body is one right Dharma eye. Your whole body is the real body. Your whole body is one expression. Your whole body is a radiant light. Your whole body is mind in its totality. When it is your whole body knows no hindrance. So I've always pictured that pearl, that one bright pearl, as this perfect, translucent ball, you know, just the most perfect, flawless pearl. And I think, you know, when we think of Buddha nature, maybe we think of it as that. But recently, you know, I've been struggling some with some people in my life and with their behaviors and my attitude toward their behaviors, and thinking how complex that is, you know, and how hard it is to keep, you know, we have this feeling of reverence when we're quiet and settled, but how hard it is to have that feeling when everything's up in the air, you know, very, very much more difficult. So there's another type of pearl called the Baroque pearl. It's actually, the Baroque period they think was named after the Baroque pearl. And the Baroque pearl has the same luminous surface, kind of surface as a regular pearl, but it's all different shapes, and it kind of is convoluted, it kind of folds in, and it has like ridges and pits and things like that. And so lately I've been thinking of the one bright pearl as this, you know, this mess. It's not a mess, it's a beautiful mess. It's a wonderful mess, you know. So, you know, that pearl like that has tremendous variation, but also tremendous mystery. So sometimes I feel like Buddhism is that round, flawless pearl. And sometimes I feel like it's the complexity and craziness of the Baroque pearl. So our practice is to greet everyone as Buddha. But how do we do that? It's really, really difficult. Or challenging. Maybe it's not difficult, challenging. We've been studying the Tenzo Kyokan on Thursday nights, and of course the Tenzo Kyokan is about the job of the head cook in a monastery, and how they take care of, how they prepare the meals and how they take care of the ingredients. And it really talks about rice and greens and the other ingredients that are offered to the cook for him to make, he or she to make a meal. It's really about how we engage and treat everything. And a lot of times when we've been reading it, I've been substituting other words, thinking how this applies in a wider sense. So I've taken the liberty here to take a passage from the Tenzo Kyokan and substitute, instead of ingredients and rice and greens, substituting words about people and how we meet people. When you meet someone, never view them from some commonly held perspective, nor think about them only with your emotions. Maintain an attitude that tries to see Buddha in ordinary beings, that expounds the Buddha Dharma through even the most trivial words and activity. When having a conversation with what might appear to be an ordinary person, do not be carried away by feelings of dislike toward them, nor regard them lightly. Neither should you jump for joy when someone appears to you to be of superior quality or special in some way. So we start by applying this kind of care in our most simple activities. And so much of what we do in the Zendo or in service is really about this, how we bow to our seat, how we brush the dust off the cushion after we sit, how we carry incense before the jisha or the officiant, how we hit the bell, how we chant. And really our chanting and our service is really meeting each other. Really the bells are about communicating, calling out to each other. And our response is really we should do it together, not about one person, being really good at something. It's about all of us as a Sangha creating this thing, which is, when we do it that way, is really wonderful. So we start very simply, but we aspire to carry that same attitude of care and reverence into our whole life, into everything, into our greeting of not just our friends or our Sangha, but to everyone we meet and to every being, as wide as we can make it. That is really our intention. Our intention is to bring joy, peace, and happiness into the world with our reverence and our care. Buddhism doesn't, well, I shouldn't say Buddhism. Japanese Zen does not speak of love very much. But if you listen to Thich Nhat Hanh or the Dalai Lama, they talk about love a lot. And even, there are some places where Dogen talks about love. Doesn't talk about a lot, but there are some places. The Brahma Viharas define what we mean by that kind of love, the love of we practice in Buddhism. And it means treating others with loving kindness, compassion, empathetic joy, empathy for their joy, enjoying their joy, and equanimity. Harada Roshi tells us, there is no one who is more or less Buddha than any other. True nature is never lost, is never hidden from you. Buddhism tells us not only are we already Buddha, but everything that exists is Buddha. That Buddha nature includes everything. Not some perfect version of ourselves or some perfect version of the universe, but this messed up, complex, wonderful, full color, self, full color world. That's it. That's Buddha. That's Buddha nature. It includes what we know and understand, but also everything else. You know, we're never going to understand completely or know. And that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Perhaps it doesn't matter after all if the tail passes through. Maybe it's the cow, the head, the legs, and the tail, the whole convoluted mess, both what passes through the window and what seems unable to pass. The whole shebang. This is that one bright pearl. This right now. This is it. When we awaken together. There is no such thing as awakening by oneself. So as we realize our own Buddha nature, we're able to see and appreciate more clearly the Buddha nature of others. Because of this, we should treat everyone as Buddha, and in all our relationships strive to recognize their manifestation of Buddha nature. You know, no matter how hidden it might be by their behavior, everyone we meet desires to really understand, to really be at peace. Everyone. Even if they're searching for it through power or money, they still desire that, I believe. So right now, we start right here with ourselves, seeing ourselves as perfect Buddha nature, I should say, as we are. That's everything. That's everything. Because from that, it spreads to everything. As we see ourselves as Buddha nature, we see everything and everyone as Buddha nature. The whole world as Buddha. This whole world is one bright pearl. Greet each person as Buddha. Practice loving kindness and compassion. Do everything to allow them to manifest the Buddha nature that is within them. Truly, this human life is special and wondrous. It creates great awe in us when we pay attention. This human life includes the whole world, for everything comes to us through this human life. Bodhidharma was asked, what is the first principle of the teachings? He replied, vast emptiness, nothing holy. But I think he could just as well have said, vast emptiness, everything holy. Everything just as it is, warts and all, the cow, the horns, the legs and the tail, what passes through the window, and what gets stuck. One bright, wondrous pearl. I want to open it up for questions, but you know, one thing when we were saying the chant at the beginning, it's very intimidating. You know, that's a high bar, you know, to carry the Dharma. And yet, it's just human beings that have carried the Dharma forever, you know, forever. So I hope that I was able to offer you something. And if you have any questions or comments, I would be glad to hear them. You can both go at once.
Oh, I see.
In tandem.
Just thank you so much. It's always, I don't know how to put this in words, but you put into words many things that I have tried to put into words myself. And there's something, I think that's kind of that, maybe it's kind of that idea that we all awaken somebody like you find the words, it helps deepen my awakening, the sense of waking up. And so thank you for
You know, I think, I mean, the first time I gave a talk, I get talks at White Heron. The first time I gave a talk, afterwards I said to Shogun, I don't want to do this ever again. It was so stressful, you know. But what I always find is that, you know, I gather all the stuff and I'm really inspired, and then it comes to the point of how do I say it? How do I put it together? That's so hard, and I think, you know, I always just kind of pray that the Dharma will speak, and I think it does to all of us, you know, just in different ways. So, thank you.
I admire your skill at doing that, and
Thank you.
encourage you to do more.
Thank you.
We have a contract, so she's going to.
Actually, I have to do it again on the 18th for, I don't know why I volunteered at White Heron. So that's good. I have very little time to prepare, so that's good.
Deborah, thank you for your talk. And yeah, what you just said about not wanting to give a talk and then feeling inspired by the process. The thing that I've given very few talks, but the thing that I always try to focus on is that I want what I say to help inspire people to continue in their practice,
Yeah.
to help give them a little bit of shared momentum.
Yeah.
And I really felt that in your talk this morning.
Thank you.
So I really, really appreciate it. And in particular, I really appreciate the emphasis on the taking care and the flipping of the vast emptiness, nothing holding, vast emptiness, everything holding.
Yeah.
And I've really been noticing that a lot lately. We talked on Thursday a little bit about the taking care of every grain of rice and that sort of thing. And I find that to be one of the most important aspects of this practice, at least for me. So to bring that forward and talk about that is really wonderful. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes, one thing when I know I've also told Shogun this, but when I first just encountered Zen, I could not stop talking about it. I told everybody about it, you know. And then once I actually lived in the San Francisco Zen Center and started practicing, I had nothing to say anymore, you know, nothing to say. And I think it's kind of like that. And then at some point they say, well, you're going to say something, you know. And it's like, okay, how do I say this? I mean, you have it in you, but how do you say it? You know, and how do you express it?
I think I would just agree that you found a way to take our Soto and very Japanese lineage and the way we talk about practice, and definitely infuse that sense of approachability. And I really felt that I really felt the love and compassion for other beings and our wacky antics in there, minus without judgment. And what she said is really going to stick with me. I actually liked it. I was wondering where the recordings are, because there were some things I wanted to go back and listen to again, because I appreciated it that much. So thank you.
I think John wanted to comment or ask a question. Hold on, John.
Hi.
Hold on.
Hi. Uh, did you call on me?
Yes, I did. I'm trying to switch the speaker, but I don't see it on here. Go ahead.
We're good?
Yep.
Okay. I don't have a question so much as a comment in hopes that you can expound upon it or add to it. I just thought that it was very I was very
Well, I can't quite hear.
happy. Can you hear me?
Now I
Can
can.
you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I don't have a question so much as a comment in hopes that you can expound upon it and and like add to it. But I was just very joyous and um happy that you that you made the observation about the pearl in question in that reading being like one of those pearls that isn't so perfect, because there's so many other there's so many it seems so many religions talk about like humankind and that and that kind of thing being like pearls, and you know it doesn't make sense if you think about it in the sense of like a perfect pearl that's just like all round and and perfect, because we're not perfect, you know. And I just love that that you made that observation about the pearl not being so perfect, you know, and but still being beautiful anyway.
Did we lose him? Did we lose him, or that was the end of the question?
Oh no, it was it wasn't a question so much as a comment in hopes that you can expound upon that a little bit.
Well, I'd say welcome to the club. You can see my insides, you know, maybe we can say that about everybody's insides, you know. Um,
Yeah.
you know, I was thinking the other thing, I looked up a picture of what diamonds look like when they first come out of the earth. And they're a mess. They're dirty and all misshapen and all kinds of things, you know, and I maybe that's a better analogy because we're like that and we practice and we slowly maybe, you know, we have that part that is perfect, but the perfectness is imperfect. I mean, it's not perfect's not the right word, and I can't find the right word, you know, but it's
Right.
beautiful and it's wondrous, you know, and we have that part of ourselves, but it's hidden even from us, and so then we begin to get glimpses of it, and then it's a matter of letting that part come out more than the other part, you know? And I think one of the things I almost put in my talk was this idea of the default mind, which is, you know, it's basically probably what we experience in Zazen when we just won't be quiet, you know, that voice. But, you know, psychologists now are studying this and looking at this, and basically we fall into this conversation about ourselves whenever we're not doing a specific task. And so that's probably why we do so many tasks and with great concentration in Zen, you know, to help us. And that's why we follow our breaths. But, you know, it's that voice that's telling us we're not perfect as we are. You know, it's that default mind that's trying to put us into a narrative and put everything we just said or done or what people have done to us that puts us into a narrative, and that isn't real. You know, and that's the thing. Somebody said to me, "Yeah, it was a big revelation to realize I didn't have to believe everything I thought." You know, and that's true. You know, you're perfect, John, just the way you are. You know,
Right.
and that includes whatever problems. You know, that includes
That's
everything.
right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your talk, Deborah. It was good. It was pertinent for me in a lot of ways. One of the things was the orcas and how, you know, their behavior. My thoughts, how weird. I was talking to my wife and somebody else yesterday, and some other creatures, whatever they were doing, I can't even remember. I was like, how weird. And with that in mind, I keep in my practice, from the get-go, I'd heard about Buddha nature. and I didn't understand it. And early on, the confusion was, it arose as me trying to explain, like my confusion was, well, I know human nature, and it's weird at best, sometimes dangerous. Like, yeah, cruelty, dangerous. And then I didn't know how to go turn and say, oh, well, this is Buddha. There was nothing there. I couldn't see it. I had no vision of it, if that makes sense, like where to head and practice. And sometimes the confusion parts sort of, and I feel something that's a vision or some kind of like, okay, that's leaning into it. Sometimes I don't. Some of that was clarified in there's distinctions, preferences, that those are the blocks from me just being able to see where I'm going, or see, I can't even explain it, but I wonder if you could maybe talk about, I don't even know where that question is, the distinction between human nature, Buddha nature, what it is I'm heading for, looking for.
I can try. One of the things I think when I give a talk, and I used to apologize in my talks, say I'm not a teacher, so, like I can't do this, but I can talk about it, because I still feel like that, And as I said, this is something I aspire to, But for me, Buddha nature is when I sit and my mind, as it talks to me, just becomes part of everything. And there's no separation, there's no difference between it and the crows calling and my knees hurting and whatever else. And I don't know whether to call it the space or because it's not just the space, it's things in it too. Vast emptiness, nothing holy. Vast emptiness, everything holy. I think we can only point at it, and we feel it, and I think everybody feels it. I mean, I think that's the thing. If the most beginning person thinks they don't know anything about Zen, but they walk in here, I believe Suzuki Roshi when he says, you're already Buddha, I believe it. We just, our darn brains are so in the way, they're so in the way. And they're not in the way because they're really important. So they're Buddha nature too, but anyway, I don't know. I think it's, again, the finger pointing at the moon in some way, but the finger and the moon are both it too, so, I don't know. I want to say, maybe he has a better explanation, but that's probably not the appropriate thing.
What?
Who, me?
Well, thank you for your words. I mean, that's, in my opinion, practicing with others. Like you mentioned, giving this talk at your house
Yeah.
to yourself. Maybe Opie would appreciate it. But, I mean, that's what's in the way of that vision for me, or whatever, is more in here.
Yeah.
And what clears that away is rubbing shoulders with you, whether you call yourself a teacher or not, or even with someone who is anyone
Yeah.
who's going this way.
Yeah.
Slogging along together.
Yeah.
So, but thank you for your answers.
Well, I think of how nervous I get when I have to do a new position. It's like, I don't feel like Buddha, I feel like an idiot that's going to try to do something new, And I care just as much as everybody else what everybody's going to think about me, But I think, I know we talked about, there was one day when you were brand new as Dawn, and I had just barely done Kokyo or chanting a little bit, and you were doing some position, maybe Jisha, that you hadn't done very often or for a long time, and it was wonderful. because we all made mistakes, but there was this feeling of us creating it together and of give and take and compassion for each other, you know? And that's what I think Sangha is or should be. You know, it's not about, it is about doing things right. We try to do things right and have great care, but it's really about us together, because there isn't anything without us, you know? There isn't anything without us. Anyway. Anyone else?
Thank you so much. So much came up while you were talking that is now gone.
Yeah, that's always the way.
It's so crazy how that is. I've recently realized how much I objectify people, and I also try to control other people, mostly my kids. But I don't see. When I'm getting a foot cramp, I don't see them as Buddhas.
Mhm.
Yeah,
No.
I don't even think about it. So I really appreciate that, like invitation. It's like hard.
Well, I think people that know me know I talk about people. You know, I'm terrible, and I have a very critical mind. I don't mean critical in just negative, but in analyzing, you know, that type of critical. And it's one of my, I'm really bad, I mean, that precept is like I fail at, you know, not talking about other faults of others. So part of the reason why I want this as my aspiration is because of that, you know. And I'm not able to do it often when I'm in the middle, but I try when I'm standing back, you know, looking at as one person that I dearly love, that I've been having a hard time with their behavior, because I suddenly saw this behavior and all of a sudden they changed totally to me, and I'm thinking, no, they're the same person. They're all these wonderful things still. And so I'm trying so hard to see that whole thing as their Buddha nature, the whole thing, you know? Because I can logically, psychologically say, oh, well, they do this because this kind of pain in their life or as a protection, or but that doesn't fix it, you know? That doesn't make it, for me, it doesn't fix it. Not for them, I mean for me. So, only thing I can do is try to love them as they are. And I think talking about love, I think talking about love as we mean it in Buddhism is really important. I mean, I think it sums up compassion and empathic joy and all those things, you know. So even if we don't like it, we can love them. And I talked a little bit about this at someplace else, and they said, yes, but what about all these teachers? Because I said something about forgiving our teachers, because, you know, there's been teachers, and I had a teacher who made big mistakes. And I believe in forgiving. It doesn't mean I'm going to let them do what they did anymore, you know, and that's the same with people. It doesn't mean we don't protect ourselves. So, anyway, that's enough.
Before we go into the four vows, let's do a set change real quick. Hold on. Forward and think that first. Yeah, let's have them. So we can do it as they start chanting. Okay, and then halfway through the chanting, go like this.
Numberless beings unsurpassable, Buddha way. I vow to embody it, numberless beings. I vow to serve them, inexhaustible illusions. I vow to end them, boundless dharmas. I vow to practice them, unsurpassable Buddha way. I vow to embody it, numberless beings. I vow to serve them, inexhaustible delusions. I vow to end them, boundless dharmas. I vow to practice them, unsurpassable Buddha way. I vow to embody it.
And that's a wrap.